You're listening to Retail Disrupted, a podcast that explores the latest industry developments and the trends that will shape how we shop in the future. I'm your host, Natalie Berg. I don't know if your brand has a great loyalty program, but I'd be willing to bet that one of your closest competitors does. That's because new research from Loyalty Lion shows that strategic loyalty programs are taking e-commerce by storm. And here's the thing. If your customers aren't joining your program, they're going to be joining your competitors. And those customers are almost impossible to win back. If you do win them back, it is an expensive process. This is exactly the kind of urgency that I'm going to be talking about at Loyalty Connect, where I'm delivering the first online keynote on June 10th. I'm really excited about this one. We're going to explore how strong loyalty programs help maximize the revenue-driving potential of all the key trends that we're seeing in retail, from personalization through to the all-important connection between physical and online stores. So join me on June 10th at Loyalty Connect. The event is running over a couple of days, and there are a ton of bite-sized sessions where you are going to get practical tips and expert guidance on how to keep your best customers buying from you again and again. Sign up now at loyaltylion.com, and I will also put a link in the show notes. My guest today is Brieane Olson, CEO of Pacsun. Pacsun, as many of you know, is the popular youth fashion retailer, which is at the intersection of fashion, art, sports, and music. This conversation took place on the sidelines at the World Retail Congress here in London a couple of weeks ago. Always love the opportunity to speak to leaders face to face, and this was a great conversation. We are going to jump to it in just a second, but first, let me tell you a little bit more about Brieane. Brieane isn't just the CEO of Pacsun, she is also the first female CEO of the business. She leads the company's vision, strategy, and global expansion, ensuring Pacsun continues to inspire the next generation through culture, innovation, and meaningful initiatives. Brieane has driven purpose-led partnerships with cultural icons and organizations such as A$AP Rocky as Pacsun's first guest artistic director, Paris Hilton, and Selena Gomez's Rare Impact Fund. Under her leadership, Pacsun has expanded globally, entering China's Douyin, the country's TikTok, and leveraging live stream shopping to engage new audiences. She's also secured key licensing agreements with the Metropolitan Museum of Art and Formula One. Brieane is a champion of digital transformation, and she's positioned Pacsun at the forefront of social commerce and AI-driven retail innovation. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Mass Communications and Business from the University of California, Berkeley, and she's completed the Advanced Management Program at Harvard Business School, where she now serves as an AMP ambassador for women in leadership. Brieane is an active member of several industry-leading boards, including Women in Retail Leadership, Shop Talk, and the National Retail Federation CEO Council, where she advises on White House policy. Brieane, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. I think you brought the California sunshine to London. But yeah, it's great to meet you and great to have you here to talk retail. Let's start out talking about disruption. Like all retailers, you've had your fair share of this in recent years, having navigated Chapter 11, having had to close underperforming stores, and a lot of your stores were, of course, mall-based. And so you underwent a huge transformation, going from what you describe as a house of brands to a purpose-driven, culture-first youth brand. So, Brieane, tell us more about this. What were the biggest challenges that you faced, and how do they lead to complete brand reinvention?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me. I've been with Pacsun almost 18 years now, so I've seen through the evolution of the brand. And there's a few things that have stayed core in terms of really being on the forefront of culture, our consumer being 16 to 24, right at that sweet spot in terms of youth, and really curating the best of brands. What has shifted over time was interest in surf and skate and some of the legacy and heritage brands that were associated with that. And Pacsun was indeed a house of brands. And today, Pacsun is proudly recognized as a brand itself, and in fact, one of the most coveted brands for young audiences today. And so establishing Pacsun at the core as a brand that's building community at the center of music, art, culture, and sports, really with a lens of fashion versus trend and the California lifestyle, is something that's been really important to our reinvention model.
Yeah, and I think a lot of retailers would envy that clarity that you have of the brand and what it stands for. So let's talk a little bit more about relevance. As a 45-year-old brand, staying relevant and culturally aligned is not easy, and especially during a period of prolonged disruption. But one way your brand continues to resonate with shoppers is by co-creating with others. So can you tell us a little bit more about this and how this strategy of authentic storytelling has impacted the business?
Yeah, thank you. The power of co-creation is instrumental to our business model, and it's something we started almost 15 years ago, whether you look at our longstanding partnership for almost a decade with Kendall and Kylie Jenner, or how we began a partnership with Jerry Lorenzo and was one of the first retailers to launch his Fear of God Essentials brand. You can see that the co-creation and the power of storytelling coming through various creators and voices, celebrities, athletes, is core to both the reinvention model, but also core to the relevance model, and really co-creating alongside the consumer and those audiences, and also strong social listening and feedback that we get from our brand ambassadors in our stores every day is incredibly important to our community as well.
That's great. And I want to come on to the social aspect, and I also want to come on to stores, because I know both of those are important. But first, let's talk a little bit more about the shopper. Now, your brand is speaking to that younger, digitally native generation, Gen Z, Gen Alpha. What are these consumer groups looking for? And I know that's a difficult question, because we can't just put consumers in one neat bucket anymore. But, generally speaking, what are their expectations and how are you catering to their needs?
I think Gen Z and Gen Alpha in particular are very fluid, and that represents and can present challenges. And so meeting them where they are and continuing to evolve and stay very fluid is really core to the strategy. And having it be a consumer-led co-creation strategy is also very important. So I think there's some very strong misunderstandings about Gen Z. One is that they're not brand loyal, and I think their expectations have changed for brands, and the way they view authenticity has changed, and how they expect the brand to show up in so many different facets of their lives has changed. And so Pacsun is a proud lifestyle brand that is really inspiring the next generation of youth. And the majority of our partnerships also have community and philanthropic give back, which is not necessarily a way that we lean into marketing, but it's an expectation for our community in terms of how we need to inspire and serve them.
So let's talk more about what you're doing in the social commerce space, because obviously that's hugely relevant to your customer base. You are on TikTok. Women's Wear Daily named you one of the top 10 brands on TikTok. You're also on Douyin, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is China's version of TikTok. So tell us about it. What have you learned by being on these platforms, and where do you see the opportunities for things like live shopping going forward?
Yeah, really the last 5 years, we've been watching both of those platforms, both Douyin and TikTok, continue to evolve. And TikTok in particular in 2019, in what started as a dance app, really, we took a big bet in terms of not only it being a moment or a place where the customer could create and see a different view of our brand, but also a real moment for co-creation and a moment for there to be something more to the interaction and engagement with the consumer. And so flash forward 18 months, we amassed 2 million followers on TikTok. We began to strategically partner with the TikTok shop, and we were one of the first in alpha and beta stages to launch on TikTok shop. And it's been an incredible success. We've sold 200,000 pairs of jeans alone on TikTok Shop
Wow.
through the Open Creator platform. And why this is so important is it's fueling the creator economy. And so I really think at the core, this is a part of our mission and why we're so passionate about social commerce and video selling going forward.
Yeah, so interesting, and it's moving so quickly as well. So let's talk about bricks and mortar retail. We mentioned earlier that your stores were historically mall-based, and you've had to adapt to keep them relevant in this digital era, like all retailers. And I know you're a big believer in physical stores. You regularly walk the aisles, and you're witnessing things firsthand. What are you seeing, and what are you doing to future-proof your store estate?
Yeah, interestingly, over the last 18 months, we've seen double-digit traffic continue to climb in our stores. And so there's a resurgence and a desire to come back to malls. And I think with Gen Z in particular, and also Gen Alpha, this idea of malls and store-based malls being more than a retail store or a place for a transaction, but true culture and community hubs is incredibly important. And I think whether you're looking at what we've recently done with Hilton in our Soho store, where she met every single customer that waited in line, and she was promoting her new album, which celebrates ADHD as a superpower. Or you look at what we've done with A$AP Rocky, where he did a surprise and delight performance in our stores. There's also these very unique ways and moments that we can connect outside of the digital world with them to create feelings and emotions towards the brand that can only be created in person.
Yeah, it's those memorable experiences that you just can't replicate with a screen, right?
Absolutely, and then amplified across all of our social channels and digital as well.
Yeah, interesting. So let's move on to leadership now. We know, as you said earlier, that shoppers want to align themselves with brands whose values reflect their own. You talk about having a conscious capitalist mindset. Can you elaborate on this? And I wonder if you think more businesses need to adopt that kind of mentality.
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand your purpose and where you want your purpose to align. And having very clearly established values is also incredibly important for an organization and a brand and the teams. I think when I think about conscious capitalism, I had met a gentleman, John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods Market, and he brought together a group of leaders to really share how conscious capitalist organizations can actually outperform others in the public market. And you can name quite a few, but I definitely think when you're committed to giving back and philanthropy and community and being a brand that is committed to do more, you see the returns.
Let's get your views on the future of retail. And I know you guys are doing a lot around AI. We can't talk about the future of retail without mentioning AI. I'd love to know, I guess, more generally, how you see retail evolving over the next 5 years. And then also just some of your thoughts around AI. Like, do you think we're underestimating or maybe overestimating the impact of AI on our industry?
I'll start with AI. I think it's absolutely instrumental and will be the backbone for the industry moving forward, but not just the retail industry. You can see how it's transforming industries across the board. And so AI is something that we have taken a very long view on, and we're exploring across all facets and areas of the business. And I certainly think that when we look back 5 years from now, it will have significantly shifted the face of retail in totality. What I'm excited about in terms of the future for Pacsun are a few things. The first would be actually an expansion for physical stores. So we plan to open 75 stores in the US alone, in areas that are underpenetrated for Pacsun, so that we can ensure that the customer has the ability to have these experiential moments with the brand and physical touch points alongside the digital ones. I'm also very excited about the future of social commerce, and I think that that is also transforming the way that we shop, and it will also transform the way that consumers think about websites and digital and .com. And so I think we'll see a continued evolution there. Pacsun is also proudly entering the Middle East market, and we are looking at global expansion. We know that what our brand stands for in terms of building community at the center and intersection of music, art, sport, and fashion resonates across the globe for the youth consumer segment. And so we're really looking forward to global expansion.
Yeah, sounds super exciting. And just to pick up on your point about social commerce, I mean, I just think it's so interesting how the way that we shop online today is still very one-dimensional. It's still quite transactional. There's not a whole lot of joy in the way that we shop online today, but it's moving so quickly. And I think social commerce is bridging that gap really nicely, where you can marry the convenience of online shopping with the discovery and the personalization that you might have only traditionally found in stores. So super interesting to see what you guys are doing in that space, and how, generally speaking, I think e-commerce is going to become a lot more immersive and engaging for us as shoppers in the future.
Absolutely. And I also think you can't underestimate the way that you can reach new consumers through social commerce, because the audiences are so much broader. And that introduction through open creator platforms and tapping into new audiences in that way is really incredibly powerful. And the power of the creator economy and what that means for youth everywhere and our audiences to be able to play a role in helping to create economies of their own, I think is really, really critical.
Yeah, and technology is very much an enabler in that respect, isn't it? It's that democratization of technology. So I want to ask you about women in retail. We know that women make the majority of purchasing decisions, and the retail workforce is very female heavy. But when it comes to who's leading these businesses, we still have some disparity, right? So we're making progress, but I don't think we've really moved the needle in a meaningful way. So I'd love to get your views as a female leader and as the first female CEO of Pacsun. What are some of the challenges that women still face today?
I think certainly we're making progress and the challenges continue. I think it's really important to acknowledge where the boundaries are and then determine what you need to do to be able to outperform and supersede those boundaries. And I think a clear acknowledgement of the boundary is the important first step, so that then there's a strategy and a plan for how you can move forward. And so, for example, I turned 40 and I went back to business school at Harvard, really with the intention of being able to commit and ensure that I had that longer career view line. And I think it was really critical to understand that after many years in the business, I had been viewed, or the perception was that I was on the creative side. And so it was important to acknowledge that as a barrier for entry and to ensure that I did something about it. And so I think taking action and understanding where the limitations are and then really finding a way around that limitation is key and crucial to future success.
Brieane, it's been so great to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Retail Disrupted. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the podcast, please leave a rating or review or share it with others. It really makes a difference.